First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. Thanks for joining us. I'm Greg Nibbler. We are live streaming here out of the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. We're here every weekday starting at 1 p.m. and we go throughout the afternoon until our 4 o'clock news. And I always like to remind everybody of that. You can join the conversations we are having here. Today, we are talking about the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, and in particular, the Northwest ADA Center is who is going to be helping to explain some new legislation that's going to go into effect in April that affects various digital devices, websites, apps, things like that. We're going to get a much better idea of what that means with our guest joining us right now, Katie Warden. Katie, thank you so much for being here. And just for people who don't know, before we get into what these new rule changes are, would you mind just letting everybody know a little bit about yourself and the organization that you work for?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Katie Warden. I'm the director of the Northwest ADA Center, and that's one of the 10 regional ADA centers. We're a national network, and we exist to answer people's questions about the Americans with Disabilities Act. So people can call in. We have a hotline and an email address, and reach out to ask any questions about this law. For example, a small business owner might reach out to ask, hey, someone with a service animal came into my shop today. I wasn't sure what to do. What does the ADA say about that? And we can explain how the rules apply in that situation. We also do trainings for organizations. So again, we could come out to a small business and do a training for all staff about the ADA rules on a particular topic. And we could come out to a small city or county and also do trainings about these new rules on digital accessibility.
Yeah, talking about that. So obviously a lot of help there for so many people because navigating rules and regulations, even with the best intentions, can be really difficult sometimes. And so that's great to have a resource like this to go to. Talking about the digital side of things, would you mind walking us through, what this legislation is and then how it can affect these different operations?
Yes, so the ADA is a civil rights law, so it prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. And it was passed in 1990. And so it already has standards that tell us how to make a building accessible, right? We have standards that tell us this is what an accessible door is, this is what an accessible parking space is. And now, this is the new rule. We have those same kind of standards, guidelines, really explicit suggestions on how to make a digital space accessible, right? So now we have guidelines that tell us this is the color contrast you need to have on your website to make sure people can see the information. These are the rules you need to make sure your website adheres to when people zoom in and zoom out. So it really gets into the weeds of how to make a digital space accessible. And this is actually brand new. So 2 years ago, the Department of Justice passed this new rule, and it gave state and local government agencies 2 years to implement it. And so we know in Oregon, cities and counties, they're working on this. They've been reaching out. They're making their websites, their mobile apps more accessible. And the deadline for compliance for larger groups like the city of Portland, larger entities, is actually this April. Smaller cities and counties, they have another year to keep working on making their websites accessible. And so it's really kind of, if you have any questions about the weeds of this, I'm not the person to answer those because I'm not a computer. I'm not a computer software, but we have people on our staff who can help explain kind of the details of how do you make your Word document accessible? Does this Word document need to be accessible? What about that PDF? We can explain the details of this rule to help small counties, larger cities make sure they're implementing the new changes.
And that's got to be, again, so very valuable to be able to have some resource because, you may not be the computer person, so are a lot of people, though, that are not,
Right.
to really understand all of that. When it comes to making these changes, how important is this for people who need things to be more accessible like that, to have access to something that really works for them? And maybe if you could give an example of that as well.
Yeah, so I think we might often assume that websites are naturally accessible. Right? That, of course, if a website gets built, it is going to be accessible to people with disabilities. But that isn't necessarily the case. So many websites out there, they aren't accessible. Right? For example, someone might use a software where they speak to their computer, right, instead of using a keyboard, and they need to be able to have that software navigate a website. And computer software people, they know how to do this, right? It's part of their training that they can create websites that are navigated using different kinds of assistive technology, but that needs to be built in. And if it's not already built in, a website might not be accessible to someone who uses assistive technology.
Gotcha. Yeah, great. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah,
No, no,
great examples.
no, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, these are all great examples of how this can work and what's, how these changes can really affect people. And so you mentioned that this will go into effect in April. And so is there anything that people will instantly notice about some of these websites, particularly some of these local government sites when they go there?
I think so. So we've already been noticing that websites in our region are getting more accessible, right? There's more notice about ADA rights on them. They've updated the kinds of forms or PDFs that are available. And so people should start to see these changes, that especially for the larger cities and counties and public universities, bigger entities.
All right, so something that everybody's going to be able to notice, something that's going to make such a huge difference for so many people. And this is great, getting this explanation and understanding of what's going to be happening, but also how people can go for help. So I want to reiterate that again for anybody out there who needs assistance, whether it's with this or any of the other things that you mentioned, where and how they can go to attain that.
Yep. So our hotline is it's a 1-800 number. It's 1-800-949-4232. And you can call that number and you'll be routed to us if you have an area code that's in Oregon. But if you have family or friends who live in a different part of the country, they'll be routed to their regional ADA center by calling that same number.
All right. Well, Kitty, thank you as always for joining us, and sharing this information. Anything else that you think is important that we didn't get to?
The one thing I'd always want to add, so this is about state and local government services, and it doesn't apply to businesses, right? This rule doesn't apply to businesses right now, but businesses can still use these guidelines, this rule, these requirements to make sure their websites are accessible to people with disabilities. I like to think of the ADA as sort of a tool or a roadmap for making sure as many people with disabilities can access services.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. Really appreciate your time and all the work that you do.
Thank you.
And for everybody watching, this is Fox 12 Now. As I mentioned, we're here in the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. We're streaming here every weekday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And you can always see all of our content on the Fox 12 Oregon apps. So that is a great way to follow along, whether that's the app on your phone or one of our apps on Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, things like that. So make sure that you get those and install them. And thanks for joining us again. We'll talk to you soon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.